What's up, KSP fans? Dylloop, and welcome back to another exciting KSP tutorial. Today we will be going over Orbital Rendezvous and docking. That was one of the highly requested things from last episode when we landed on the moon. By the way, that moon rocket's actually capable of more than I thought. I landed it on Minimus, took off, landed on the moon, took off, and then returned home in one trip with it. I also landed on Duna with it, got to Jewel, couldn't quite land on Lathe. And I couldn't quite return from Duna. I got stuck in an orbit around the sun. But today we're just going to do some orbital docking. Now, here's a docking port. You get them in the utilities. There's two different types of docking ports. I recommend using the bigger one. Wait, is this the smaller one? It is. The smaller ones fit nicely on there, but you could put bigger ones on, whatever. I'm using the smaller ones. I do not know if they are cross-compatible. So I do not know if you can attach the small ones to the big ones. I'll have to check that out sometime or look it up. So we have a very simple rocket, docking port, two side parachutes, SAS and decoupler, some RCS. There's this set of RCS decouplers. When I look, if I take off this decoupler, this is a nuclear engine. The center of mass is directly aligned with these thrusters. And then there's a second set of thrusters down here that is aligned with the center of mass with this final stage for that. So yeah, this works out pretty good. Two sets of thrusters on the whole thing, and then the asparagus staging is a little different than I normally do it. The main stack is just one of these large tanks. The next stack the first stack that comes off is one of the large ones and medium-sized ones. Second stack that comes off is one of these large ones and then small ones. So basically it dumps the largest first and works its way down to the shortest. This thing gets into orbit relatively well. It actually flies amazing. So let's go ahead and launch this guy. We're gonna get into orbit much the same way as we always do. I'm probably not gonna show you guys the whole trip, only because it's rather boring. You guys have seen orbits before, and we don't want to cover it too much. So what I'm probably going to do is set this guy in a stable 100-kilometer orbit or 105 kilometers. Who knows, but it flies relatively well. We're just going to go fly this up, and then I will return once it's up into orbit and show you guys what we have. And then we'll be launching an identical rocket to rendezvous with it. But yeah, other than that, this rocket flies amazingly. We'll see you guys in just a split second. Okay, so that whole flight took 8 minutes. Now, we had a bit of confusion with the maneuver node system last episode, and the episode before that, and I just wanted to cover it real quick. So when you add a maneuver, and you edit the maneuver, it's not going to do the burn automatically for you. It shows you this little blue marker. You're going to have to move it to it yourself, and you're going to have to do the burn yourself. Now, you're going to want to start the burn either at the same time or half of the time of what it says estimated burn time. So either when estimated burn time exactly matches node in T minus, or when node in T minus is exactly half of the estimated burn time. Either one kind of it does about the same results. So just wanted to cover that real quick. So we're in orbit with this ship. Now it's got plenty of RCS fuel left because I didn't really use a whole lot. I only used 8 units. And it turns relatively well without it. So here we are up in orbit, orbiting Kerbal. Now what we're going to do is not end flight, but click Space Center. And what this will allow us to do is keep the flight in orbit. Now if you go to the tracking station, you can see all your flights currently in orbit, wherever they're at. And I think I have a bunch of fuel canisters orbiting the sun and whatnot over here when I was landing on Duna and stuff. And there's none near Jewel. But yeah, you can fly the ships by clicking on it and clicking fly, whatever. So that's the tracking station that we haven't seen yet. And let's go back into the vehicle assembly building and load a Rendezvous B. Now, I didn't really need to load it. I could have just renamed it. But because it's the exact same rocket. Alright, let's go rendezvous with our ship. Now, the quickest and easiest way to do it is to actually time warp when you're still on the ground until the right moment. You don't have to, but it does save some time and an annoyance to do that. So what we're going to do is we go into the map mode, And we're going to wait until the rendezvous ship is right before our ship. See how it says Rendezvous B ready to launch, and then it says Rendezvous A, and it's in orbit? We're going to time warp, and this thing will travel around Kerbin, and it's going to meet up. When it's about right here, we're going to launch. You can kind of judge it, however. If you overshoot, doesn't matter, but you're going to want to try to get as close as possible with that initial launch as you possibly can. So I'm just going to wait until it's right there, and then we're going to go ahead and launch this guy up to meet him. So it's a very standard launch at first. Whoa, that wasn't standard. It left an engine behind. Look at this. I see that? Left an engine behind. What the heck? Weird KSP, so we're just going to go ahead and restart the flight. There was a structural linkage failure. Oh no. Yeah, that was weird. I'm not going to cut that part out just because it was funny, entertaining. Alright, so let's go ahead and do the time warp again. Again, wait until it's right before you in orbit. That'll be good. And let's hope that the structural linkage failure didn't happen again. So we SAS on, throttle up, and launch. Yeah, it didn't happen. Sometimes that happens. KSP is not a finished game, and sometimes there's weird glitches like that, or it just was a time warp glitch. So, very standard flight. We fly up until 10,000 meters, 10 kilometers or 10,000 meters, and then we start doing our gravity turn. Okay, sorry about that. My dogs will not stop barking. I do not know what's wrong with them. But they just bark at everything. This phone rings and they bark at it. We got them a shock collar and they ignore it. So here we are just dropping our first stage. And then we just keep flying up until, again, like I said, the 10,000 meter mark. Just typical orbital stuff. Same exact ship. And the reason I did that was just time. You can have, start building your space station, send up different types of parts, different rockets, and different launch stages, or the same launch stages. Do whatever you want. It's your game. But in order to save some time on my part, I'm just using the same rocket so I don't have to build more than one. It's very simple. It's all the same. No matter what type of rocket you're using, it's about the same. Sometimes it differs on how much you want to lead your target by in the map mode before you launch, depending on how long it takes your rocket to get to orbit. If it's got a low thrust-to-weight ratio, that's going to take a while, but if it has a very high thrust-to-weight ratio, it's going to take less time. This one takes about 8 minutes. So we burned out our second stage, our second stage, and we're just waiting. So, as we can see, we're going to come up on it at around the same time. That's actually very good. But if it is ahead of you in your orbit, you're going to want your orbit slightly lower. And if it's behind you, you're going to want your orbit slightly higher. It looks like it's going to be ahead of me because by the time I reach here, it's going to be here. We're going to go ahead and click it. That's a left click and set as target. Good. And we're just going to wait until this here reaches probably about 90 meters, maybe 80, doesn't really matter. I'm going to go for 90 because we don't need to wait that long. So about right there. Then we set our maneuver. You guys know this stuff. Not too hard. This rocket's a little bit funky because I always have to burn for the maneuver right when I set it. Just because I'm using a nuclear engine, and this engine never has enough fuel to get the whole orbit down. So I'm going to go ahead and wait until probably about a minute and 15 seconds left. And that's just because I've flown this rocket 4 times. Because I've done this before with the same rocket, just so I didn't have to try it the first time on camera. So I'm just going to start burning now. Turn off the RCS. Now, if we look above us somewhere, we should be able to see our other ship. See, it's over there. It's getting ahead of us only because, it's in orbit. We're moving up very slowly, and it's moving along its orbital path very fast. But soon we should be catching up on it. It actually went out of our sight because it got too far away. Got unloaded by the game and just not physically rendered. So there we go, dropping our other stage. And this is our final stage, and this is exactly what that rocket is. Docking port, parachutes, command pod, some fuel, and this nuclear engine. These nuclear engines are great. They're really bad in an atmosphere because they do not have a very good thrust-to-weight ratio. They're very heavy. But in space, they're very good because they don't use a whole lot of fuel. And once again, dogs are barking. I'm going to go ahead and pause real quick, walk over to my door, and shut it. There we go. Much better. Shut those guys out. Hopefully you guys can't hear them. Alright. So we're just trying to finish our maneuver. Remember to try to always keep your ship aligned with the blue marker as much as possible to achieve basically as accurate as possible to what you were doing. Now, I see my apoapse is going quite high, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel this maneuver node and start a new one right at my apoapse. Right there. And just bring it up like so. Now, these are your closest approach that you have on your current orbit path. So as you can see with this orbit, I would be 132 kilometers away from it, and that's not good at all. We want to be as close as possible, like at least 7 kilometers, if not closer. Yeah, and our orbits are a little different, so I get to show you guys how to fix your plane to match the orbit as well. Alright, so now that I'm on my final engine, I can go ahead and wait until half the time of my burn time. So if it's going to be a 24-second or 23-second burn time, I'm going to say 24. So we're going to wait until 12 seconds and start our burn at 12 seconds. 8, 3, 2, 1, and 0. So throttle up. And just basically wait for our burn. Now, as you can see, the ship is even farther ahead of us than it was originally. That's fine, because we're in a lower orbit, so we will catch up to it eventually. Now, I'm just watching my periapse here. I want it at least out of the atmosphere, but 92 meters is fine. Cancel this maneuver node. Now, as you can see, we have a closest approach at 38 kilometers. That ain't good enough, is it? So, what we're going to do is just warp around. I could have gone lower. My apoapse is a little high, so it's going to take a little bit of time to catch up to this ship. And what you're going to do is warp around until you catch up. And what I'm going to do over here, this is the descending node, and see how it says negative 0.4 degrees. So what we're going to want to do is at the descending node, add a maneuver, and go ahead and line up the orbits, and burn, figure out which knob does what, and try to match up your orbits as much as you possibly can, mostly by trying to get these ascending and descending nodes to 0 degrees. Alright, and that's a 1 second burn time. That should be in the north direction, because this is the top of Kerbal. So we just turn around until we're north. Flip our RCS on to line up. And so RCS works really good even with the just the single set of RCS ports there. Alright, so turn off the SAS there and just try to line this guy up. Perfect. So because it's just 1 second burn time, I'm going to burn at 1 second. And I'm going to go ahead and do a quick save, just in case I time warp too fast and miss the burn. Because I tend to do that because I'm impatient. So I go a little overboard on the time warp and miss it a lot. 2, 1, and burn. There we go. Or we should have a descending node of 0 degrees. Perfect. So now we'll get an even closer approach just because we don't have an orbital inclination. So we go back to time warping. You can do this. You can do that maneuver at either the descending or ascending node. For the descending nodes, you're going to want to do the maneuver going north, and for the ascending node, you will want to do the maneuver going south, depending on how your orbits are. But that's basically it. So as you can see, that closest approach says 74.9 kilometers. Now, as soon as I pass it again, we're going to get a little bit closer. So we just keep on time warping. There's some debris there. Now it's taking a bit to catch up. We have Rendezvous B. Ooh, wait a second, I didn't even realize we're actually ahead of it. So this, as you can see, 74.9, and as soon as we pass it, we get an even farther distance. So what we're going to want to do is go ahead and just anywhere along our orbit, fire up our rockets prograde, so that we can increase our orbit on one side. And we're just going to fire them up a little bit. And what will happen is these will slowly start drifting together until we get an intersect. So we've got 54, 47, 42, 40, 30 kilometers, 20 kilometers, 19, 18, getting smaller and smaller, 8, 7, 5, 3, 2, 1, and now what I'm going to do, now that I got it really close, is I'm going to go ahead and turn my RCS on using R. Now, H and N are your forward and reverse RCS. So if I'm hitting N and H, you guys, what you do is you hit H and N and you try to get the separation as close as possible. So right now it says 0.3 kilometers. Perfect. So what will happen is when you reach this point in our orbit, and after we pass the orange, it'll that will turn orange and this one will turn pink. So that one turned pink and that turned orange. The orange is your second. The orange is your first intersect, so it's intersect 1, and the pink is your next intersect, so opposite, or the next closest intersect that you will get. So yeah, it doesn't matter which one you do, either one is accurate, but as you can see, 0.3 kilometers. So this is very nice. So we're going to start time warping down. It says the 19 seconds for the intersect point. What we're going to do is try to find the ship that we're aiming for in the sky, wherever it may be. It's right there. And we're going to point retrograde. As you can see, our little target thing, instead of saying orbital speed, it now says your speed relative to your target. So what we want to do is point retrograde and start firing our rockets retrograde. And this will slow down our speed relative to the target. You want to get that to 0 meters a second. And I went a little bit too much there, not a big deal. Now we could just hit H or N to even it out more. Easier than with the RCS ports. It's slower, but it's more accurate. There we go. 0 meters a second. And then a lot of times you're not going to want to do your turning with RCS. You want to avoid that as much as possible because it does affect your speed. Now, there's 2 new markers on the nav ball when you're targeting something. There's this pink marker here that is a dot with a circle around it, and then we have another one that's a dot with 3 lines pointing off of it. And those are, this one is your, if I can stop turning, the one with the lines around it is pointing directly away from your target, and the one with the circle around it is pointing directly at your target. So what you want to do is you want to be heading directly at your target, don't you? So all you need to do is line up your prograde marker at this little point at marker. I'm not sure what it's called. So what we're going to do is we're just going to burn towards it, not a whole lot, until you get your prograde marker really close, and then you're going to use your I, J, K, and L keys with your RCS on to adjust where that marker is. So you just want to line it up directly, and you just got to kind of play with the keys to find out what does what and what not. So we're just lining up to face our target, and once you get close enough to be comfortable, you're going to want to burn backwards or use your RCS to stop yourself again relative to your target, which should be relatively easy with RCS because we are now pointing prograde or retrograde. So we just fire the RCS thrusters backwards and we'll slow down slowly but surely. Right now I'm coming in at 2.5 meters per second. You can go faster depending on how far you are. I tend to go a little bit slower. Alright, now that I am coming closer to it, you can see the prograde marker shifts away. So I'm going to get my RCS again, find out which way to turn this guy, rotate my ship if necessary, and just try to align that marker. Good, now we're heading directly at it again. Alright, we should start slowing down very soon here. So we have our RCS on, pointing prograde. And you just want to keep messing with your RCS and just align it so it's always facing towards your target. That way you're always heading directly towards it. 50 meters now, we can actually see the ship, so what we're going to want to do is burn backwards and cut our speed completely. What I tend to do is, you could do one of two things at this point. I'm pausing it so I have time. You can either maneuver around the ship, going very slowly, and line yourself up with the docking port you want, or in my case, I'm gonna switch to the other ship and point it directly at me, so point the docking port directly at me. And that's easier with some ships than others. If you're using a giant space station, that might not be possible because those things aren't maneuverable. They're like whales in space. So I'm gonna hit the bracket key to switch to my other ship, and we're going to right click on the docking port of the other ship and set it as target, and right click on our docking port and click control from here. Now I'm just going to point directly at the target. I'm not going to burn or anything, we're just pointing directly at it, and we hit T, and then we switch to our other ship, do the same thing, set as target, and get our docking port, and then line this guy up as well. Alright, perfect. So now we're pointing our ships at each other directly, and all we have to do is hit H to burn forward, and then line up our path so our prograde is aligned with our forward movement marker. Now, I don't know the exact speed you need to be going when you're docking, but I tend to try to do it at like 0.5 meters a second or slower. The slower is the better. So you never want to be going too fast when docking, because you're going to smash into the other ship. So I'm slowing down here. Just trying to come in as slow as possible and aim at it and use the R, J, K, and L to align it. Now you just kind of coast in. I'm going 0.2 meters a second. We're already aligned. You coast in and you'll notice like a magnetic pull once you get close enough, and the ships will automatically dock. So congratulations guys, we have completed our first docking. These two ships are now one. If you have extra crew space, you can go ahead and EVA your Kerbals and have them join each other, or if you're me, you can just fire both engines at each other for fun. Look at that, not moving anywhere, just wasting a ton of fuel. You can even go ahead and deorbit these guys, not too hard. You just right click one of the docking ports and click undock, and that'll disconnect the ships again, and you can move them freely from each other yet again. So what I'm going to do is point a little bit away from it first so I don't burn it up, and then I'm going to point retrograde like any deorbit, like so, and just fire retrograde. And that'll bring my periaps down to a manageable 30, 20, 19, 13. There we go, we're landing. So time warp until we get into the atmosphere here. That other ship will drift away. Now docking is used for plenty of things. Refueling ships in space, building ships in space. For example, if you have a really hard mission and you cannot get it off the ground, but you want to go to another planet, you can send up the ship in multiple parts and then dock them together. So you can send up a giant fuel tank with just a probe body on it, and then later on dock another ship to it. That way it's got a ton of fuel and you don't need to try to launch it all into orbit in one launch. So that's about it for our tutorial, guys. Now please let me know what you guys want to see next tutorial. I can either do that mission to Minmus and the moon all in one, because I haven't showed you guys Minmus yet. We can look at some aerobraking techniques. We can go to Duna. That might be a little harder because I'm really bad at interplanetary travel. But I will find out how to design a ship and bring it back. Most of the time when I land on other planets, they're staying. So we can either, like I said, land on Minmus, go to Duna. I can show you guys how to land on it, and maybe not take it off. If I figure it out between here and then, I'll show you guys how to take off from it as well. I'm thinking of what else we could do. You can do the same docking thing exactly the same on the moon. Yeah. Just basically, if the other ship is ahead of you in your orbit, you just want to go lower, and if it's behind you, you go higher, and you'll meet up with it eventually. So this is What the heck? I slowed down too much. My parachutes disconnected themselves. You know why? I was in 4 times time warp, so that's a good example of what happens if you're in time warp, guys. So yeah, just let me know what you guys want to see. I could do anything you guys want to see done in KSP. I want to do some spaceplane tutorials. I have a joystick shipping to me soon, a new joystick, so I'm probably gonna wait off on that one. We can land a rover on the moon, a rover on Duna, whatever. Maybe a rover tutorial. So, just leave a comment, and we'll see you guys next time, and thank you all for watching. Goodbye.